Okay, welcome back. It's time to dive into registering our seat post type, and then from there we'll move into flights. So with our seat post type, what we're going to want to do is register it. Now we could do that using the WordPress register post type here. I'm just going to do this seat, and I'm not using the proper hooks for this. Actually, we have to pass in some extra information here. We have to tell it that the I think public is true, so we will get that interface. Typically post types are hidden by default. So we'll save this, and then let's jump over to the WordPress admin to kind of see what we get. So here we are in the WordPress admin, and as you'll see, we have two posts. We don't have seats. Surprise, surprise. But actually we do. It's the seat ID, and here's that dummy data we were talking about in the last tutorial. However, this makes no sense whatsoever. It's called posts for one. It's not called seats. And it's just confusing, right? So let's correct this, but we don't want to correct it using WordPress. That would take a little while. We want to use TypeRocket so we can move along a little bit quicker and do a lot of things with a little bit less code. So here we've registered a post type with WordPress. In fact, we'd have to do an action and then do, I believe, a init and then wrap it inside of this function for WordPress to actually pick up on it properly. We have to do these 3 lines of code just to get what we saw before. However, with TypeRocket, we can do a TypeRocket post type. And we can just do seat here, and we'll comment this out. So this one line of code here does all of this. It initializes it at the right time using the correct hook without using hooks. And because we're using object-oriented flavor inside of TypeRocket, it takes care of that for us. So we really don't have to do anything with hooks when it comes to post types, which is quite nice. So let's save this and then look at the browser, kind of see the difference. I'm going to refresh the page here. Oh, I clicked the button and now it already refreshed. So here we say it says seats. That makes way more sense. That one line of code did a lot for us. In fact, it pluralized the seat name for us. So this is nice. However, we want to do a little bit more here, right? So if I click into edit, that A1 title, that's great, but that doesn't really constrain the end user to getting things right. What if they accidentally typed like a name in there? We just want it to be a number and a letter. So let's constrain this a little bit more. And then also with this post type, this could be seen. Here we go, we have a slug. We can go to /seats and auto draft, and that will essentially, give us a way to look at this on the front end. But this is really just a back end representation of something that the back office would care about, not necessarily the front end of the website. So we need to keep this from appearing on the front end of the site and not give us a slug. So let's go back to this section and update this a little bit. So here in our code, we want to say this is featureless because we don't need a title and we don't need an editor. And when we save featureless for the post type, that's essentially what it's going to do. It's going to say, hey, don't use revisions for post types. Don't use anything at all except for that publish button and some dates. Okay. So we've eliminated essentially at this point our title field and our text editor, along with revisions and some other things. Now what we care about is making this admin only. So we'll make it admin only and we'll save this. And now we will essentially no longer have slugs associated with this in terms of getting a front end view. It will have a slug technically, but it won't really do anything for us in terms of URLs. So let's jump back to the browser and let's hit edit on one of these, and we'll see there is nothing here. There is no URL. There is no way to really see this on the front end, and that's really what we want. So the next step in the process is to kind of make this look a little bit nicer. Maybe we want a ticket icon and some custom fields. And so for that, I'm going to jump over to our tutorial on the site and scroll into the section that we care about here, which is this seat post type. Now, I don't know all the names of these icons, and so that's why I want to go here to copy it. But we'll get the icon, and we'll also add these custom fields. Okay, so I'm just going to grab all this technically. Let's just go ahead and do that. Jump to the code, and then we'll just plop it in here. So the things that we've already looked at are feature and admin only. This set icon will create a nice little icon for us in the admin of WordPress. However, this section here is going to add columns to our database. Sorry, I always say database when it's really just the table within the admin view. So our admin table UI will now have these row and letter columns. And I'm going to remove this for now because I'll show you what that feature does. So I'm going to save this, and we're just going to look at the index section of this seat post type. And here we'll see we have row and letter, and these are separated out from the title. So even though this is saved as a title field, it's not actually being controlled by the title input itself that you'd be used to typing in a post type. It's controlled by custom fields. And so let's jump back over to the code and look at what those custom fields are and how we got there. So I'm going to scroll down to this set main form section. And this is where the action is going to happen in terms of our data entry and our form for the post type. So instead of a title field, we're going to have a select box for the row and a radio button for the letter. And in fact, I could set this to set a default value. And let's say the letter A is our default value. So A will always be the default whenever we create something. And our range of seats are 1 through 15. And then flat simply means that for the options in the select menu, you'll have like essentially the name that shows up in the drop-down list that the user can see on the interface side, and then the actual value that gets saved into the database or put inside of the value field of the select menu. And so we're saying, hey, these two things are the same. So that's what flat means in this instance. Otherwise, we'd have something like this, where A would be the value and this capital A would be the UI interface key that we would look at. So that's what we have here, select box and radio buttons, and then we echo those particular custom fields to the page. Now, when we create our form object, and that's what we're doing here with TR form, that's going to automatically connect to the seat model that we have for this post type. And TypeRocket's smart enough to look up the fact that there is, in fact, a seat model that relates to this seat post type because of how we have it registered and set up. Both the post type and the model share the same name, and so TypeRocket's smart enough to kind of say, hey, let me go connect those things together. So with all that being said, we have our form in place. However, when we save that form, we're going to use that relationship system that we saw before where we connected to that meta information in the last video. Through the relationship, we're going to pull that seat model. We're going to connect to the meta, and then we're going to pull the row, which is this field here. And then we're going to pull the letter, which is this field here. And then when we save the post, it will save the title as those two things combined. So even though our post type doesn't have a title field, we will still save the title using this little post type mechanism. So with these two custom fields, we can constrain the user and keep them from entering in bad information. So here we are in the browser. I'm going to refresh and we'll see we have tickets here with a nice little icon. If I hit edit, we'll see that we have this row field and these letters. And if I hit add new, we'll note that the default value for this radio button is A. Here we go. And this is searchable. So I can say, hey, 15, and we have 15. And this is quite nice. So row 15, and we'll say F, hit publish here. And if we go back to seats, we'll see that F15 has been saved as the title, even though we don't have a particular title field for this system. I'm going to jump in here and we're going to inspect this code here. And we're just going to look at, oh, this is the worst one to look at because it's a fancy JavaScript driven drop-down list. But I just wanted to show you this form that gets generated for us and what that looks like on the HTML side. Yeah. So this input field is being generated for us by the TypeRocket form creator in our code. So I'm going to jump over to this and we'll see that here's our radio button. And this code here is essentially generating the HTML for us for the HTML page. And we'll note that the A and Fs and things should be the values for the radio button and also sort of the label that we'd click on. So here we see that we have the value of A and the label of A. And our field name is TR letter. And the TR prefix is essentially how all the fields are going to get grouped together when they get sent through the HTTP request when we send the post, right? When we send the post request to the server to basically save the data. And so TypeRocket is always going to look for fields with this TR underscore. And we'll look at this later in our controller section for the MVC part, because we'll see this data and how it gets passed through and then how we can grab it and save our collection of information over into that model, our custom model. However, because we're using a custom post type, TypeRocket's automatically going to take all of these custom fields and assume their custom metadata, and it's going to save that as custom meta into the WP meta or post meta table. Okay, so if I look at post 12 here and then jump over to the code and then grab our database and then go to post meta, let's see where post, is it post ID? Yeah, post ID equals 12. And then let's see if I can hit enter here. Okay, and here we go, row and letter saved as metadata on this particular post type. And that's where that's stored. Now, we could store those custom fields in a custom table, but that's another video for another time. And so here we have our post type set up and ready to go. This is the seats section, and then we'll move into the flights here in a second. Or not really in a second. We'll move into it in the next video. How about that?